The Royal Observer Corps was a civil defence organisation operating in the United Kingdom between the 29th of October 1925 and the 31st of December 1995, when the Corps' civilian volunteers were stood down. Composed mainly of civilian spare-time volunteers, ROC personnel wore a Royal Air Force-style uniform and latterly came under the administrative control of RAF Strike Command and the operational control of the Home Office. Civilian volunteers were trained and administered by a small cadre of professional full-time officers under the command of the Commandant Royal Observer Corps, latterly a serving RAF Air Commodore. Overview. In 1925, following a Defence Committee initiative undertaken the previous year, the formation of an RAF command concerning the air defence of Great Britain led to the provision of a raid reporting system, itself delegated to a subcommittee consisting of representatives from the Air Ministry, Home Office and the General Post Office. This raid reporting system was to provide for the visual detection, identification, tracking and reporting of aircraft over Great Britain, and was eventually to become known as the Observer Corps. The Observer Corps was subsequently awarded the title Royal by His Majesty King George VI in April 1941, in recognition of service carried out by Observer Corps personnel during the Battle of Britain. Throughout the remainder of the Second World War, the ROC continued to complement and at times replace the chain-home defensive radar system by undertaking an inland aircraft tracking and reporting function, while chain-home provided a predominantly coastal, long-range tracking and reporting system. With the advent of the Cold War, the ROC continued in its primary role of aircraft recognition and reporting, and in 1955 was allocated the additional task of detecting and reporting nuclear explosions and associated fallout. By 1965, thanks to advances in technology, most roles and responsibilities relating to aircraft had been withdrawn and the ROC assumed the role of field force for the United Kingdom warning and monitoring organization, a role which the ROC continued until the early 1990s and the cessation of the Cold War. By the late 1980s, the ROC comprised 69 professional full-time officers, approximately 10,500 civilian spare-time volunteers, and over 100 Ministry of Defense civilian support staff. At HQROC, over a dozen full-time secretarial, clerical and other administrative staff were present. Each of the 5 area HQs were staffed by a clerical officer and a typist, and each of the 25 group HQs were staffed by a clerical officer, typist and handy person. Following the UK government's options for change defence spending review in 1990, the vast majority of the civilian spare-time volunteers were stood down on the 30th of September 1991, with the remainder being stood down on the 31st of December 1995. The closure of HQROC on the 31st of March 1996 and redeployment of those few remaining HQROC staff marked the disbandment of the ROC after over 70 years of service. First World War. The ROC can trace its roots to the First World War and the requirement for a warning system to bolster UK defences, predominantly over southeast England, against bombing raids by Zeppelin airships of the German Empire's Luftstreitkräfte. A system of observation posts and observers was organised, with a network of approximately 200 posts established in strategic areas. Initially, these posts were manned by British Army personnel, who were in turn replaced by special constables, and posts were coordinated on an area basis with telephone communications provided between themselves and their associated anti-aircraft defences. Throughout 1917, Germany began to deploy increasing numbers of fixed-wing bombers, with the result that the number of airship raids decreased rapidly strongly in favor of raids by such aircraft. In response to this new threat, Major General Edward Bailey Ashmore, a Royal Flying Corps pilot who later commanded an artillery division in Belgium, was appointed to devise an improved system of detection, communication and control. The system, called the Metropolitan Observation Service, encompassed the London air defence area and later extended eastwards towards the Kentish and Essex coasts. The Metropolitan Observation Service met with some success and, although not fully operational until the late summer of 1918, the lessons learned were to prove invaluable for future developments in the field of aircraft observation, identification and reporting. Major General E.B. Ashmore is often considered to have been the founder of what would eventually become the Royal Observer Corps. Between the wars, following the armistice in 1918, it had been intended that the knowledge, experience and skills gained by the Metropolitan Observation Service during the First World War would be maintained for the future security of the nation. However, by the end of 1920, the observation post networks and their associated anti-aircraft hardware had been decommissioned, and in 1922 the responsibility for air defense was transferred from the War Office to the Air Ministry. Following this transfer of responsibility, Major General Ashmore, who had been responsible for air defense during World War I, reported to a new Air Raid Precautions Committee, established in January 1924. In areas surrounding Romney Marsh and the Weald, a series of trials were undertaken to develop a raid reporting system, which would employ an optimum arrangement of observation posts and associated control centers. During 1925, these trials were further extended to cover parts of Essex and Hampshire, and by October a proven modus operandi had been developed for a new organization to be known as the Observer Corps, which was established on the 29th of October 1925. Within a year, 4 groups operated in southeast England, covering much of Kent, Sussex, Hampshire and Essex, with the intention that the whole of Great Britain would be covered by a total of 18 groups. Cooperation and participation was thus required between the RAF, the Army, the British Police Forces and the General Post Office. In January 1926, observers were recruited as special constables by county police constabularies, and each observation post was manned by a sergeant and 6 special constables. Recruits were spare-time volunteers who received neither pay, uniform, nor allowances, with the only distinguishing insignia, in the form of Observer Corps lapel badges, being purchased by individual volunteers at their own expense. In 1929, the control of the Observer Corps passed from the county police forces to the Air Ministry, although chief constables retained responsibility for personnel and recruitment matters. On the 1st of March 1929, the new headquarters of the Observer Corps was established at Hillingdon House, RAF Uxbridge, and Air Commodore Edward A.D. Masterman CBCMGCBEAFC RAF was appointed as the first Commandant of the Observer Corps. Air CDRE Masterman held this appointment until his retirement on the 1st of March 1936, and was succeeded by Air Commodore Alfred Warrington Morris CGCMGOBEAFC RAF, who was destined to lead the Observer Corps through the critical period during the Second World War, which saw the RAF emerge bruised but victorious, following the Battle of Britain. During the 1930s, the number of groups increased until by 1936, England had a full coverage of observation posts southeast of a line between Flamborough Head and Poole Harbour. By 1939, practically the whole of Great Britain was covered with observation posts, with the western parts of Wales and Scotland together with England's West Country being included during 1940. The final group, Portree in the Western Isles, was formed in 1941.